All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's do this thing. Welcome to the inaugural episode of Smack Talk here on Sportskeeda YouTube and Sportskeeda's Facebook page. My name is Rick Ucchino. Joining me, as always, from here and from now on is our senior inside journalist, Tom Colohue. And this is something we're going to do every week. You know, I had a spiel prepared and it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Everything has just been thrown out the window because literally mine and Tom's minds, just like everybody else's, I'm assuming, has just been blown by what we saw at the end of SmackDown. I wish I could swear. I really do. I wish I could swear in this program. We are a PG program, but my goodness, Tom, what did we just witness?
I want to say I have a clue, but I don't. This literally could possibly mean anything. There are so many possible permutations here and storylines. Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman.
My gosh. That is something I didn't see coming. To steal the line from SummerSlam. They're keeping it going for a week. I did not see this coming, and I'm literally giddy as a schoolgirl right now. And we have comments already pouring in. Please feel free to ask questions. Feel free to freak out with us right now. We are journalists, you know, in the technical sense, but we're also wrestling fans. So seeing Paul Heyman sitting next to Roman Reigns.
Not just sitting there, there's endorsement there. There is endorsement. Using the line, it's a spoiler. That is an endorsement. He is all in with this guy.
When Reigns said the first half, I'm like, no. And then they did and then he did the spoiler, and then the deadpan over, and I'm just like, yeah, I don't know what to say to this. I really don't. It's mind-boggling. Like you said, there are so many angles to this. I mean, we're talking about Roman Reigns, who has been one of the biggest rivals to Brock Lesnar, is now under the Paul Heyman flag. And Ozzy is asking us, what does this mean for Brock? That's a good question. I mean, all of a sudden, could we possibly see, again, Tom, as you said, there's a bunch of angles that they could go with this. What if we see like a Roman Brock team up here? I know everybody's going to assume that Roman is just now the new Brock Lesnar, but what if this is like a legit powerhouse stable now that Paul Heyman is building?
I didn't even consider that. I automatically assumed Brock was going to come and try and take Paul Heyman back by force if necessary, and we get another feud. But you're right. Imagine that as a tag team. This is terrifying. Right. Before we get more into this, because we could just launch into this for everything.
Oh, yeah.
Hello and welcome everyone here. There are a lot of people in here right now. 155 at first count, which is incredible for a start. We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook. A lot of comments coming in. Hello to everyone. Welcome. We're going to be here every week. If you don't know us, I am Tom Colohue, senior journalist here at Sportskeeda. Rick, would you like to introduce yourself for your first time on the Facebook Live at least?
Yeah, you guys have probably heard my voice before, but now you're getting to see my lovely face to it. I'm an official writer here and interviewer for Sportskeeda. I also do a lot of voiceovers for the YouTube channel. So radio guy by trade. Now I'm trying my hand at the whole streaming thing. Video's not exactly my thing, but I'm getting it working. It's going. So I'm happy to be here, Tom. I'm happy to be talking to you. We're going to be doing this a lot more often. And yeah, man, wow, boy, the comments are coming in on Reigns and Heyman. Like that again, man, this is just something it's hard to put into words. It's really hard to describe what it is we just saw and how monumental that moment is, not just for Roman Reigns and what it means for him moving forward. Because the biggest thing after SummerSlam, after the end of SummerSlam, is everybody was asking, oh, well, is Roman a heel now? Is he a bad guy? I would have to assume yes now. Absolutely. The mannerisms in which he spoke tonight, the attitude that he had, he was the only, I mean, Braun Strowman for a minute was hesitant on signing the contract, but that's just because he wanted to beat up Drew Gulak first. I'm sitting there and I'm going, why is Roman Reigns just so hesitant to sign a contract for a Universal title opportunity, which is something that he had and then he left. And the Universal title, as he mentioned, is something that he did not lose. He medically had to give it up. This is something that he wants. So why is he holding off? What changes would he possibly want? And then they deadpanned over to Paul Heyman and suddenly everything just made sense.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. I think you said everything I could have said there. Just to recap on a couple of the comments that we've got coming in, we've got a lot of comments, so please forgive us if we don't manage to get to all of them. I do not know how to read your name. I apologize for that, but I'm limited in my languages. No Retribution today. No sign of Retribution. Nothing at all. I think potentially this show was quite stacked. That's why some of the matches were short. So with so many things going on, maybe they decided not to go with Retribution. In addition, we've got a question about, is it possible that Roman is a leader of Retribution after today's SmackDown last segment? I've got to say, this heavily leans towards no.
Yeah, that was...
This for me, eliminates him completely.
Absolutely. And that was my first thought when he showed up at SummerSlam. And he had that shirt that said wreck everyone and leave, which is pretty much what Retribution has been doing. Whether it's been everyone or everything, it tied in perfectly to that. Having Retribution being part of with Paul Heyman and him, that makes no sense whatsoever. This takes that completely off the table and really eliminates one of my talking points, because I was under the assumption that Roman Reigns was going to win the Universal Championship this Sunday thanks to Retribution and set up the unmasking as him as the leader, a Vince McMahon-esque unmasking, and set him up as the leader of Retribution. To me, this takes it completely off the table now.
Completely agree with that. I was of the opinion personally that the Fiend would be retaining. I wouldn't have had the Fiend win the championship from Strowman if they were going into a triple threat anyway, when Roman was going to win it. That's why I think he's going to retain. We've certainly seen a tease of Alexa Bliss. That could still play into it, but this opens so many possibilities. I'm going to skip back to a question just before we start going through the full thing from Matthew Soroki. Was it disappointing that there wasn't a female match, or is it because of 2 pay-per-views in 1 week? We did have 2 heavily storyline female segments.
Yes.
In what's going on with Alexa Bliss and what's going on with Sasha Banks and Bayley. Personally, I felt the more important thing isn't the in-ring action, it's that they have compelling storylines. Both of them, for me, had compelling storylines. What do you think about that, Rick?
The disappointing part was, for me, was absolutely no follow-up with Mandy Rose. None. That, yes. And again, that might have been a victim of a packed card, of a packed show tonight. There was a lot that was going on there, but it could also be the fact that, and Tom, this is something that we talked about, Mandy Rose appears to be in line for a program with Bayley.
Yes.
Moving forward. So this could just be, they got to finish up the tag team title angle and everything that's been working on there this week at Payback, and then move forward with Mandy Rose. But to not even have her be on the show was a little disappointing. Not even to be out there, with Otis. It definitely seems like, at least in the last couple weeks, that they're kind of taking the focus off of their relationship a little bit.
Absolutely. I think you're entirely right. They want to essentially finish things with Bayley and Sasha involved in the tag team championships. Then Mandy Rose will step in. The disappointment for me is that we didn't have any follow-up with Naomi, who beat Bayley last week, even though it was a strange way to do it. So just before we get into the whole big thing, there are a lot of questions about things that happened during the night. We will get to them, including talking about Sasha, including talking about Alexa Bliss. For everyone here, all 142 of you, thank you very much for joining us. We have 44 likes and love so far. Let's get them rolling in. And Rick, do you want to start with the beginning of the show?
Yeah, so I was expecting the beginning of the show to be Roman Reigns. And obviously with the ending being what it was, I get why it wasn't now. But at the beginning, I kind of thought that was a knock on the program. But we open up with Adam Pearce telling, security that things are very combustible tonight, which I thought was a tip toward Retribution. Turned out not to be. The focus on this show throughout the night was getting those 3 signatures for a Universal title opportunity, which I really didn't think was going to be that difficult of a thing. And again, as we saw, it all led up to the big Paul Heyman reveal at the end. And I thought they started, honestly, with the what should have been the hardest one, you got to get the Fiend signature. That turned out to be the easiest one of the night, which is a little confusing.
It did. It's fantastic that they had the running segment throughout the whole show. They had a running storyline of Adam Pearce, someone you don't see much of, trying to collect those signatures. It's a great way to do a contract signing without having anyone actually engage. No chance of a flipping table, nothing like that. And it allowed each person to have at least one moment where they really managed to show off. That for me was a pretty good way of doing it. And I did like the tip of the hat to Retribution, the clear red herring, including the appearances of Vince McMahon, who literally was just there as an authority figure. He had no real play whatsoever beyond encouraging Adam Pearce. That was a great way to build a red herring because I was convinced he was going to get attacked.
Yeah, absolutely. Wholeheartedly agree with you on that one. What is Adam Pearce's title? Does he have a title? Does he have he's just what is he in a he's obviously got some authority, he's got some power. He's not a general manager, but they're using him as in that general manager role without actually giving it to him.
Do you mean kayfabe title or actual job title?
I mean kayfabe title, but I mean
no idea. You know how this works.
He's just going to show up. He's just going to do things, and that's going to be it. At least they said his name a lot tonight. This felt like a real introduction of Adam Pearce as an authority figure, whether he has a title or not.
Yeah, it did. And it's been a while since we've had an authority figure. I do think there is space for authority figures. I think Paige particularly did a great job. Everything that happened between Shane McMahon and Daniel Bryan when they were a unit was very good. I still remember Daniel Bryan's disappointed dad face being one of my favorite memes of the last 2 years or so. So for me, that was great. And I think it's good to have at least the option of a general manager type character, even though he may not be featured for another few months now. They were able to slip him in a way that was believable and interesting. I also have to do a quick shout out to Kayla Braxton, who had a wonderful little moment when Adam Pearce was knocking on Roman Reigns' door where she was hovering and she was waiting for a story. And as someone who interviews wrestlers, you'll know this as well as I do, Rick. Sometimes you are literally just stood waiting to talk to someone and then you just get shifted to someone else.
Yep. I've done it before. For those of you who don't know, I'm based out of Cincinnati, Ohio. I have a background in covering, baseball and football and things of that nature. Yeah, having been in a Major League Baseball locker room trying to get comments from somebody, the second somebody else walks by, oh yeah, you're hopping on right there trying to, especially if it's somebody who had anything to do with the game or anything major that happened that night. Oh yeah, you're immediately hopping over there. So that was a very realistic moment in a very good way to use the backstage interviewers, which WWE does not have the best track record of, and using their backstage interviewers in an effective way. I think everybody who's part of the show can be used as a way to drive the story forward and can be used to, everybody can be used to make the show great, from the referees to the backstage interviewers to the commentary table to everybody. It's not just about the performers in the ring. And that was a great way of using Kayla.
Absolutely. It's just an interesting way and a convincingly different way. Just that moment of realism, because often everything comes to them. Everything comes to the producers, the interviewers. You'll constantly see it where you'll be filming Baron Corbin walking towards the camera and then suddenly action happens. We saw in NXT when Damian Priest missed his cue and there's just this moment before he starts walking to the hot tub where he's just stood there. And then he starts moving. This was a lovely, real moment. The fact that they didn't put much focus on it really added a lot for me.
Yeah. So moving on in the show. So after Adam and Vince have their conversation and Pearce goes off, we get the introduction of the new Intercontinental Champion, Jeff Hardy. He comes down to the ring, cuts a quick promo about winning the Intercontinental Championship last week, talks about his knee injury a little bit. Said he was ready to defend the Intercontinental title right then and there, and then AJ Styles comes down. Obviously, he has beef about the way things went down last week, accuses Jeff Hardy of premeditated cheating for an injury that AJ caused. Yeah. This was an interaction that was very confusing, to say the least there, Tom. It kind of felt like neither one of these guys knew exactly what to do.
I agree that There are times when it feels very real, and there are times when things aren't scripted, and that makes things feel more real because there is a bit of a banter back and forth and occasionally they'll talk over each other. This felt like nobody had actually been given anything to say, to the point where it's like, okay, go out there, make a match happen. And it was a bit stunted. Jeff Hardy has a bit of a strange cadence when it comes to his promos.
Yes, he does.
It works with a crowd because he can stop and he'll get the crowd's energy. That's a good thing, but there isn't any crowd at the moment. And even though we've got the Thunderdome, we still don't have that real-time interaction. So I feel he needs to be a little bit more punchy. Meanwhile, AJ Styles was doing that typical heel thing of, I'm annoyed and I don't know why, but I'm annoyed.
Yeah.
We expected it. We expected exactly this to happen, apart from the fact that we got another match out of it with Jeff Hardy and Nakamura, which I'm not going to complain about.
Yeah, I'm not going to complain about the match happening, but I am going to complain about Shinsuke Nakamura losing a match for a championship to a one-legged man, to a guy who was still... Now, granted, Jeff Hardy did use the knee brace again, so they kind of protected Nakamura a little bit in this matchup, but dang it, man. I look at where Shinsuke Nakamura was back in 2018, and I look at where he is now. And even though he's technically a Grand Slam champion now, yes, I'm counting the NXT title in that situation. He had a lengthy run with the United States title. He had a lengthy run with the Intercontinental title, and now he is a tag team champion. It just seems like even though he's racking up these accolades over the last couple of years, they don't mean anything because they don't really push him, if that makes any sense. They don't give him any really good storylines. And when he won his singles championships, he kind of disappeared for weeks at a time, almost to the point where that whole Shinsuke Nakamura thing, like everybody just forgot about it. I think he defended it all like 2 times before he dropped it.
I genuinely forgot about it entirely until it was mentioned. Also, I have a question. I have to ask a question because Michael Cole may have steered me wrong here, but I can't tell for sure. Pretty sure Shinsuke Nakamura started the year as the Intercontinental Champion, didn't he?
He did.
Yeah, Michael Cole said if he'd won this match, it would be his first ever Intercontinental.
That was a botch. That was absolutely.
Yeah, it kind of.
Shinsuke was the first guy with the new title.
With the new title, it kind of really is a microcosm of everything that happens with Nakamura, though. I forgot about his US Championship run. The announcers, literally the commentary team, whose job it is to know what's going on, forgot about his Intercontinental title reign. It sucks for the guy.
Yeah, hey, at least they remember.
Sucks.
At least they remember that he had a history with AJ and that he won the Royal Rumble at one point. At least they remembered that. It's like, I don't know. It's like the second they decided to let AJ retain at WrestleMania, and then he dropped the low blow, and then they just spent the summer trading nut shots over and over and over again, but he never got his hands on that championship. He never really got over AJ Styles. It just crushed all momentum for the guy. And yeah, you really, really do feel for him. Hopefully one day the guy gets his moment. Maybe he has to go back down to NXT to get it, but the guy is insanely talented. He's insanely charismatic, and they just, for whatever reason, don't want to go there. And honestly, it kind of makes perfect sense that he's with Cesaro in a tag team, because those two are basically the same. They're basically the same, minus the charisma. Cesaro's from time to time. You know what I'm saying?
I would even throw Sami Zayn in there, to be honest, as someone who really hasn't been given the right opportunities, hasn't been given the shots that he deserves for the talent that he has. When you look back at that match in NXT between Sami Zayn and Shinsuke Nakamura, Nakamura's first match, the sheer quality of wrestling that this guy has, and it seems like the only time they've ever known what to do with him is when they're throwing him at Kevin Owens. He's not the only person guilty of this. Sasha Banks and Bayley was the same thing for so long, where Bayley literally was defined by Sasha Banks. Now, Bayley has moved out of that in the last year or so. Sami Zayn hopefully will do if they give him a bit of a dominant moment with this championship. But I'm worried Jeff Hardy's just going to take it and run with it. I say run with it. He's got a bad knee, so take it and walk with it.
Yeah, real quick before we move on into the show, Matt has a great point here. If NXT, has people going back both ways in the upcoming draft, Nakamura would make a lot of sense to go back down to, I say down, they're all on equal footing now. There's still that little bit of developmental stigma there with some of the talent there, but I mean, you still got guys like Finn Balor and Adam Cole down there. That's a major program. So I hate saying go back down. But if he moves over, it would make sense to shift him back over. They would have to drop the tag team titles at some point. Shouldn't be too difficult to get it off of them. They need some opponents, though. That's something we'll get back up in a little bit. But let's move on. So Jeff Hardy defeats Shinsuke Nakamura. They have a little bit of back and forth between him and AJ Styles, who's on commentary. At one point, Nakamura gets thrown into AJ Styles. It appears that they are setting up for a rematch at Payback, even though AJ Styles is saying he's not medically cleared for some reason. I don't know why he's not medically cleared. Is that like a head thing because he got hit in the head with a knee brace last week? That confused me a little bit.
I'm really not sure. I'm not aware of any particular injury. I think this is just a way of writing him out of the storyline until we have had champion versus champion instead of having champion versus champion versus champion. Because ultimately, AJ Styles did lose because of cheating. That is true. And Jeff Hardy did intentionally cheat to beat Nakamura. So it kind of justifies what AJ is saying. And I completely understand if they put AJ Styles in that match. They haven't, though. And I think this is their way of keeping him out of it.
So they had that little back and forth there. Jeff Hardy's coming up on the ramp. And then my heart just got so happy when Sami Zayn's music hit. He's been gone for 4 or 5 months now, just as long as Roman Reigns has. Sami actually competed at WrestleMania where Roman Reigns did not. I had hope that Sami would be coming back at some point, especially now with Roman Reigns back. He comes back. It's clear that he's ready to go again, and not only that, but he brought his Intercontinental Championship. Anybody who has followed him on Twitter over these last 5 months, anytime anything of any significance has happened with the IC title, Sami Zayn has been complaining about it on Twitter. And it is very smart of them to bring that now into the storyline that Sami feels comfortable performing once again. It was so great seeing him tonight, and not just seeing him once, but seeing him several times throughout the night. Fantastic. Loved it. I'm a big Sami Zayn guy. Huge.
I completely agree. The fact that they used him in an interesting way, they teased the breakup of the team that he had. They did a lot of different things with Sami, and he is someone that you've just missed so much. I've been talking about him returning. We talked about it on Backstage Heat, which is our Twitch show, which you should follow at twitch.tv/backstage team. And I also talked about it on this here channel in the Monday preview. Sami Zayn, much like Roman Reigns, is someone they've been contacting pretty much non-stop to try and say, look, we want to be as safe as possible. Do you feel confident coming back now? He does. Here he is. Just before moving on, I want to say thank you to Ozzy for congratulating me on my recent Twitter breakthrough.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Go ahead. Plug it, Tom. How many followers you have now?
10,000.
Oh, cool. I'm nipping at your heels, by the way. I'm at a cool, hang on, I'll check right now. I am at a cool 1,530. So I'm right there with you, man. I got a 1 as my first number.
I encourage everyone to follow Rick Ucchino at Rick Ucchino, but I didn't want to let that one slip by. Thank you, Ozzy. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, no, especially seriously though, if you're not following Tom, follow me, whatever. I don't care. Tom's the one with all the inside news. This is the guy who knows a lot of stuff that I wish I had the opportunity to know before, him. But look, I'm just here for the hot takes. Tom's the ones that's here for the news, so he's the guy to follow for sure. Feel free to throw in your questions. By the way, we'll answer a few intermittently as we run throughout the show here. This is Smack Talk. It's the inaugural episode here on the Sportskeeda YouTube and the Sportskeeda Facebook page. We will be here every Friday night, right after SmackDown, or Saturday morning. There are some folks who are on the other side of the world, like Tom over there. What time is it where you're at right now?
24 minutes past 3 in the morning. So yes, we will be answering as many questions as we can as we get to them. Once we finish a segment, we'll have a quick look through, like while I'm talking now, Ricky's looking through the comments, checking to see any questions that may pop up. I'll be doing the same thing when he's talking, just as long as we can both keep track of the conversation. We need to be in the habit as much as possible.
Yeah, so I hope I'm saying this correctly. Sahil Nandi is, she says, this is he or she, I'm sorry. This is out of the segment question, but what about Seth Rollins being the leader of Retribution after last Monday night's segment there in the main event?
Well, Seth did escape it wasn't so much that they weren't attacking him, it's that he did escape, but they did leave him be. It's possible, given his character at the moment, as the Monday Night Messiah, it would make a lot of sense for him to have quite a lot of people following him. So I would completely believe if that does happen. However, there are so many possibilities at the moment. I think it's great that we can have so many conversations about this without knowing for certain. I'm really not sure. I think that's a good thing personally.
Yeah, and I think this is exactly what WWE wants, is even though, they've been okay, like their actions haven't really been great. They haven't been presented well, but this is what WWE wants. They want people talking about Retribution and trying to figure out who it is. The question is that look, you can guess, people have been throwing out names all week, especially after Monday night. Mia Yim is a name that's been thrown out there. Dominik Dijakovic is a name that's been thrown out there. I personally think Chelsea Green is one of them. There's a lot of different names that have been thrown out, but this is what they want. They want you guessing. They want you interested, or at least intrigued to know who these people are, and hopefully you'll care once they're unmasked. I think the key point is to unmask them at the right time, because the longer this drags out, the less interested people are going to be. Look at Eric Rowan and what was in the cage. And at the other point is there, I hope they actually have a plan. Because with the cage, they did not. They did not have a plan. They just let it drag on and on and on and on. And all of a sudden, we get a freaking animatronic spider that was dead a week later.
To be clear, they did have a plan. They just changed it about 14 times, and you ended up with what you ended up with. Yeah. For more information on that, by all means, check out the Instagram live that Eric Redbeard, formerly Eric Rowan, did with our colleague Stephanie Chase over on the Sportskeeda Instagram live. There is a full interview there of about an hour long. Very interesting stuff.
Yeah, so Troy with a comment here. He says, Sami is great, just has not been given the right stories or the push he deserves. I wholeheartedly agree with that. Sami has been somebody who has taken whatever the company gives him and does the best with it. Just does the absolute best with whatever they give him, because he's that talented. He's that good. And then they finally give him a singles championship this year. And then, of course, just 2020 happens, and then he has to have it taken away, which means my hope is that now that he's back, they're going to play hot potato one more time with that Intercontinental Championship. Sami Zayn will reclaim what he never lost. There's a lot of that going around lately, guys trying to reclaim championships that they never lost, both at NXT and on the main roster. But Sami Zayn should win that Intercontinental Championship back, and he should have it for a very long time because he's earned it.
We're also seeing a lot of people celebrate having championships which they've made up across the different things. We've seen, what's the name of the championship? The FTW Championship in AEW? We're seeing some in Impact. It's a crazy madcap world we've got at the moment. We've seen 2 Intercontinental Championships. Let them fight it out. I just hope Sami Zayn finally comes out a victor.
All right, Victor has got a question up here that, Tom, you might be able to answer. Not really a question, but a statement. Rumors that Rusev is the leader of Retribution. Now, he seems to be awfully busy on Twitch these days, but he still is arguably the biggest free agent out there. Anything rumbling on Rusev at all of any substance.
There was a pretty heavy rumor that he was one of the original members of Retribution when they first attacked, based on body type and what you could see through the mask, particularly around the eye line. However, around that same time, he also did announce that he had COVID. To my knowledge, he has not been involved in this whatsoever and has no interest in doing so. He wanted to leave the company well before he was released. He has no interest in returning.
That's why you should follow Tom on Twitter, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome into, for those of you who have been hanging around and those who are hopping in for the first time, please keep your comments and your questions coming here on Smack Talk. Sahil with another good one here. And this is something that, Tom, you and I talked about on Backstage Heat last Saturday. Nowadays, WWE main roster does not have good tag teams. What do they do with the tag team division? To be fair, they have good tag teams. They're just, a lot of them are on the shelf right now. You got AOP that's hurt. You got the Usos that are hurt. 2/3 of the New Day are out with real and storyline injuries. So, I mean, they have some marquee tag teams. But this isn't AEW. It's pretty clear that they just don't really heavily push the men's tag team division.
We did talk about some backstage heat, so we'll just quickly reiterate now because it's like a 20-minute conversation over there. We'll throw it up on our Twitter after this for anyone interested. But when it comes to this, I'm of the opinion that once we have tag teams back, it will be a lot better. But we're seeing a shuffle now in NXT of tag teams. Imperium just lost the belts because they need to go back to NXT UK, for example. So there's a lot of a reshuffle going on. We need a draft. We need some moving around. We need something to change. That's coming in October. It can't come soon enough.
Yeah, and just now looking at, especially with Reigns back and with Sami Zayn back, SmackDown is stacked. Like, I am extremely excited that we get to do the SmackDown show as opposed to Raw. But at the same time, you got a lot of guys on the roster who are kind of almost fallen to the wayside a little bit. You look at guys like Baron Corbin and Matt Riddle, who have been in this feud for weeks now. I mean, Matt Riddle was brought over from NXT and shot out of a cannon, and then all of a sudden he's kind of fallen back into the middle of the pack again, and we're finally going to get the blow-off match, or at least a match between Baron Corbin and Matt Riddle, which is something we'll get into here soon. But with Reigns and Sami Zayn back and Daniel Bryan due back hopefully sometime soon. You know, I know he just had a baby, so who knows when he's going to come back, but all of a sudden you add Daniel Bryan into the mix. You can't get all these people on SmackDown every week. It's only a 2-hour show.
Yep, and even Raw struggles with the people that's got to cost 3 hours. They've been encroaching into SmackDown with the multi-brand Battle Royal recently. We can't afford that anymore. SmackDown needs an extra hour. It is a full and stacked roster, and even post-draft we're going to have that because you've got so many people not available right now. The Drew Gulak storyline with Daniel Bryan, that's seemingly been abandoned.
Yep.
Whatever's going on with Chad Gable, he just keeps getting beaten up because there's so many people they can't push because of how many people they need to push.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like everybody has their favorites. Like we talk about Sami Zayn is somebody who desperately needs to be pushed better. Kevin Owens right now, as I think, is a guy who's being extremely under pushed, especially considering the main event level talent you have available to you on Monday Night Raw right now. But at the same time, yeah, you can't push everybody all at once. And it's when you only have one show, which is why, you know, AEW runs into problems with the as big of a roster as they have. They only have 2 hours of live television every week, which is why Dark is always so stacked, which is what that's only available on their YouTube channel, I believe. Yeah. But if you break down WWE, you could sit there and say, well, they have, let me do math real quick, 7 hours of live television every week. Yeah, but do they? Because each show is treated like its own brand, so the roster is still cut down. So you only have all of these people, with the exception of the women's tag team champions, which are allowed to float on every show, and they have been a lot recently because it's Sasha and Bayley, and they're awesome. They only get 2 hours to put everything together. And so, yeah, that's how you end up having Baron Corbin and Matt Riddle stretch out over 2 months without a match actually happening. What happened to the Lacey Evans-Naomi storyline that we had going on there for a minute? I know it was sparked by something as dumb as a karaoke contest, but it was still something that they were working on. And yeah, they didn't follow up with Naomi beating Bayley last week. I mean, these things, they end up dragging on because you can't fit everybody onto the show. So yeah, they desperately need to shuffle things up a little bit. Feel free to keep sending in your comments. There was one that I saw earlier that made me, I really want to talk about this because Tom, maybe you'll have more information on this. Sahil, we've been talking about Retribution a lot, and this is something I actually joked about on Twitter, and this makes me happy that somebody else went there. What about Wade Barrett as the leader of Retribution? Wade Barrett making his return to the company. He was on commentary this week. They've put him on the NXT roster on WWE's website. I would be happy if Wade Barrett made an in-ring return for the company. I don't know if that's something that he wants to do. Have you heard anything about Wade Barrett and his status with WWE?
Much like with MVP, they brought him in for a one-time gig, and then he was interested, so they sounded him out about potentially getting back involved in storylines a little bit. To my knowledge, there is no plan to do that right now, but there are a lot of discussions ongoing about it. I do just want to quickly touch on the previous point, though. when it comes to the depth of the roster and the fact that they have so many people that need pushing, isn't that a great problem to have?
Yes, it is.
It's like having a really deep bench in a sports team. You can always tag this person and tag that person, and you know they're reliable. This is the same for Wade Barrett. They brought someone else in now who they know is reliable.
Yeah.
And that means they can essentially deploy him however they may choose. But I worry that when they actually release so many people, they reach an amount of people where they could actually push almost everyone, and they just keep adding more.
Yeah.
They can't help themselves.
And that's the thing. It's like I see Wade Barrett and I look at the potential that they could do with him, and I get excited. And it makes me feel like when they announced that John Morrison was coming back, and I'm like, oh, they could do a lot of really interesting things with John Morrison, but they're probably going to stick him with The Miz. And then guess what happened?
If he's happy, he's happy.
Yes, exactly. If that's
not everyone needs to be chasing top titles.
That's fair. That's fair. And if that is something that he has aspirations of doing, he totally could. The guy can still go. The things that he does in the ring, the things that he did tonight, made me stand up and go, geez, man, like, you are so much more than an airhead comedy act. Like, he does great at that. I think some of the skits that he and The Miz have done have been fantastic. But me, as a fan of John Morrison, I wanted more substance, more important storylines. But again, if he's having a good time, that's great.
Don't get me wrong. I cannot wait for Morrison versus Styles. I think that will be an incredible match. But you need to have people all across the card who represent their division. I look at the Usos, I look at the New Day. They were where they wanted to be. And you get so many tag teams who are put together who always eventually break up because they're just there to fill a spot. No, own the spot, own the division, own the championships. You have to have people across the board doing that. That's why you have 205 Live. That's why you have NXT UK. It's why you've got Tommaso Ciampa staying with NXT, because he's happy where he is. You need people like that.
Absolutely. Victor, by the way, says make Morrison IC champion. No. Sami Zayn needs to have that title for all the way through WrestleMania next year, and I will die on that hill. I am willing and ready to die on that hill. Speaking of Sami Zayn, moving on in our recap of the show. So after, let me look at my notes because I kind of got lost here.
Yeah, we went off on one a bit there.
Yeah. Sami Zayn came back. He brought his title, and then they go to commercial break. He comes back. He cuts a great promo to remind everybody just what happened with him where he left off, where he did win the Intercontinental Championship. He left. I believe Kayla asked him, where has he been for the last 5 months? He says, none your business. And they just move on because there's no need to address it. I thought that was the best way to do it. We all know why Sami hasn't been around for 5 months. No reason to come up with a BS reason. He just doesn't want to talk about it. And he says, hey, look, I'm still the IC champion and I am here for it. And then, as if things couldn't get any better, we move from Sami Zayn to Firefly Fun House time. And we get happy-go-lucky Bray Wyatt, and all of his friends are here, including his brand new shiny blue Universal Championship belt with his nameplates on it that he just won earlier this week. And Bray's just so damn good. He was clearly playing up the face angle, which, now, and especially looking at it now from the end of the show, which everybody who's here, I promise we will talk about Paul Heyman and Roman Reigns more. We will answer all your comments on that. But we do want to try to get through the rest of the show because there were some really important things that happened here tonight.
Yeah, and we do have to kind of work on staying on topic because at this rate, our show will be longer than the show we're talking about. So unfortunately, we're not going to be able to answer all of these questions. For example, we've got Rick Scott there asking about rumors that Roman could be the leader of Retribution. We have actually already discussed that. So if you want to pop back after the show and just have a look at that, because this will be available on demand as well immediately after it's finished.
Yes. So Bray cuts a pretty entertaining Firefly Funhouse promo, takes a hilarious shot at Reigns' new teeth, which everybody's been getting in on that act since he showed back up at SummerSlam. This is something that I actually noticed a while back because he did like R-Truth's game show a while back on YouTube or wherever it's on, or maybe it's on the WWE network. And I saw on Twitter and like he had clearly something was different about him and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. And then he shows up at SummerSlam and he has the new teeth and everybody's losing their mind. Roman, dude, I think they look great, man. Do you. It's obvious what you spent your money on and your time off. That's great. everybody will get used to it eventually, but for right now, it's the hot thing to make fun of his teeth. And I thought Bray did a great job at it tonight.
He's laughing along with it, and that's the best thing to do in that situation. He's having a great time with Randy Orton. Of all the people that you'd expect, he's just trolling Randy Orton, and Randy Orton's trolling him. They're having a great time, so all credit to it. But he has history with white things. And by this, I mean the trainers that he wore at Fastlane a couple of years ago. Everyone thought he'd lost his boots and had basically borrowed the shoes from the Usos. Trainers,
I didn't know about that one. I didn't see that one.
Yeah, I say trainers in the UK, sneakers in the US.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair. You said, yeah. That
trainers, yes.
I get you. I get you. I get what you're going. So Bray cuts the line about the teeth. All of a sudden, there's a knock on the door. Postman Pearce appears. Very easily gets signature number 1. I thought that would be a little harder to get. Turns out it would be the easiest one of the night. Again, that was Bray. To me, that was Bray kind of sealing the deal that he's kind of a babyface now. I mean, even with the Fiend still being that monstrous character that he is, it's pretty clear Bray Wyatt's kind of playing the babyface in all this.
He's certainly softened down a lot, and I think the key thing there is that people who were on the Thunderdome at SummerSlam were told, cheer Bray Wyatt. That, for me, is a big giveaway. Yeah. More than anything, though, I think they teased the Fiend being involved a little bit here when he was first mentioned by Postman Pearce. Bray had the moment of...
I'm sorry, go ahead. Okay. No, you're fine. I just read a Victor.
No, I was doing the moment, man. I was acting.
Yeah,
earning me Oscars.
Victor had a good line there. He thought that was a mouthpiece that Roman had in his mouth. Sorry, I just laughed at that. That was good, very good. Anyway, you were saying.
By all means, bring them up. So we've got some movement on the screen, and you can highlight that without having a little giggle to yourself. Oh, you're gone. You are gone. Anyway, the idea at the moment, yes, is very much we are going to have a face Bray Wyatt. It looks like he's going to be champion a bit longer. I think it's very telling that he's using the Blue Championship and not the Fiend Championship.
But the Fiend is the only one that carried that championship too. So, I guess we'll have to see what happens at Payback on Sunday, because the Fiend's the one that's going to come down to the ring. So maybe he will have the Fiend title belt. That's a thought there. Do you really think, though, that somehow Bray Wyatt's going to walk away with the title on Sunday?
Yes, I do.
How? Because especially at the end of the night, the way that this is setting up, and trust me, I'm a big Bray Wyatt guy. I would hate for, him to have just this 1 week run, but man, they look to be all in on Roman Reigns right now. And especially now that he's paired up with Paul Heyman, it seems to me like they're ready to hotshot him the title right now, because he was set to win it at WrestleMania.
They are all in on Roman Reigns, and yes, he was set to win it at WrestleMania. It could happen, but in a triple threat, no holds barred, with whatever changes these are, with Alexa Bliss in the background, with Paul Heyman in the background, with whatever is going on with Braun Strowman, the most infuriating thing right now is that all 3 of these men have incredibly compelling and powerful storylines.
Yes.
They have all just gone through major changes that make you think all 3 of them have to win. It's great storytelling. Yes. I can see Bray Wyatt essentially escaping with it, taking out Braun Strowman and pinning him when Roman has already been beating on him for ages. That's what I can see happening. However, it doesn't matter who wins, because every single one of them has an interesting storyline going forward.
They do. And I think if Bray were to beat Braun in this matchup, I think that would effectively kind of write him out of the Universal title picture right now and focus really on the Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns storyline. We've had so much of Bray involved with Braun over the last few months. It'd be nice to get some closure on that, even though Alexa is going to be there. There's still that Alexa Bliss story to be told. And I know everybody's talking about, and I think Victor even put it in the comments here, Alexa turning into Sister Abigail. We kind of saw that tease a little bit tonight with Alexa Bliss, and we'll get into that coming up here a bit on Smack Talk. But yeah, there's still a story to be told with Braun. He doesn't need to be in the Universal title picture, and there's a lot of meat on the bone in the history between Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns.
There's also a lot of meat on the bone in the history between Braun Strowman and Roman Reigns. There's also a lot between Braun Strowman and Bray Wyatt. There is so much going on in that regard. I'm just going to fly through a couple of quick questions here that we have just to move on. Ozzy says, will Brock show up on Sunday? Very unlikely, not impossible, but the fact that Paul Heyman is now with Roman Reigns does suggest, as is asked a bit further down, but I can't... Yes, as is asked a bit further down by Rick Scott, the fact that Heyman is now paired with Roman Reigns does suggest we're not going to see Brock for a while now.
I would speculate that we're not going to see him until there's actually live fans.
I suggest we definitely won't see him until the end of the year at least.
Now, you brought up something on Backstage Heat that would be, which is our Twitch show, by the way, every Saturday at 6 o'clock. What's the link there that they need to follow us on there, Tom?
It is twitch.tv/backstage team.
There you go. By the way, that's where I get unleashed. That's where I'm allowed to say swear words. So if that's something that entices you to come on board, hop on. That show's a little bit more PG-13 than this one is.
Wrong way around.
Huh? What?
This show is more PG-13 than that one is.
What he said. But you brought up a good point last Saturday in that once they're ready to go to, bring live fans in and have whatever it be, 25%, 45%, 50% capacity, somebody should show up and destroy Thunderdome. And Brock Lesnar would be the perfect guy to do that because he just does whatever the hell he wants.
I can only wholeheartedly agree, because there is plans to increase the capacity. When they are able to renegotiate the contract in the middle of October, they will want to be saying, let's bring in 10% capacity, let's bring in 20, let's start filling those seats. And when they have the opportunity, they will crush some of Thunderdome, and then Thunderdome will be used to keep people separated. Brock Lesnar is a perfect example of someone for that. Imagine for a moment Brock Lesnar versus Braun Strowman just brawling through the screens. Certainly Brock and Roman could do that.
Yes, absolutely they could. Let's go to a couple more comments because there was a few more. So Ozzy is bringing up the fact that is Mandy and Sonya on hold for this Sunday. Well, Sonya Deville is, for all intents and purposes, done for the time being. She lost on Sunday in what was a loser leaves WWE match. Obviously, she has a lot of legal things to tend to right now. She also has some outside projects. I do believe there was some talk that she had either a TV or a movie gig or something that she needed shorter hair for, hence the hair versus hair match, something very similar we saw to Kevin Nash and Chris Jericho back in the day. So she has a lot of things that are tying up her time. I do believe she will be back in WWE at some point. That's what Dave Meltzer has reported. Tom has reported similar with Sonya Deville. This is just going to be taking time off. Mandy was not on the show tonight. Didn't really have a whole lot to do with her heading into Payback on Sunday. We suspect we will see her this coming Friday on SmackDown. Let's see what else. So Brenda wants to know, what's the deal with Tamina? Is she going to wrestle at any time soon? She was on TV for a hot second tonight in the Alexa Bliss segment. Look, I think it's just Tamina's talented, and they had that weird tease that was on Twitter for a little bit that she tweeted out, this twisted character in a straight jacket that was fantastic. And then she deleted it, and we've never seen that come to fruition. I think she's just, unfortunately, at the bottom of the depth chart a little bit here.
That's exactly it. She was told to pull that particular thing on Twitter because there was no plans to actually follow that through as a storyline. It was something she produced herself. There are quite a few people at the moment, mainly on the women's division on SmackDown, who can't get on TV. They are focusing entirely on Sasha Banks and Bayley. They are now trying to give Naomi some time, but they are trying to weave her into storylines that already exist. And there are a lot of talented people, Lacey Evans, Naomi, Carmella, who simply have not had a chance to be on TV. Nikki Cross hasn't been in TV in a match for a while now as well, since she got her big shot, which I believe was the last pay-per-view. Extreme Rules? I want to say Extreme Rules.
Yeah, and then she got another one like a week later.
Yeah, they had the rematch.
She lost her championship match, pushed down Alexa Bliss, and then The Fiend showed up.
Yeah, and that's really kicked into gear there. So they're trying to focus on stories, and really they wouldn't have the storyline with Alexa right now if not for Bray Wyatt and Alexa Bliss sitting down, having a conversation and making something happen. So I applaud Tamina for trying. It's a shame she didn't get the chance. Maybe she will in future.
Yeah,
Keep going.
And to be fair, she got, she did have a championship opportunity earlier in the year. So I mean, she's had some more time this year than she's had in the last 4 or 5. So I mean, she did get a chance earlier on in the year. It was pretty obvious they weren't going to put the championship on her. Look, I'm a big advocate for the women's division. I would love, again, this is something that we talked about with all the talent that they have on these stacked rosters. Yeah, I think there are a myriad of women who deserve more time on Raw, SmackDown, and NXT. The problem is finding the time, which is why I think the women need their own show. Maybe WWE should contact me with that idea, but it's not my money that I would be spending to put on that show either.
We will unfortunately need to move on now because we are going way beyond what the actual show is going to be. This is going to end up being a 3-hour show, an hour longer than SmackDown.
All right. So let's see. Matt Riddle comes down to the ring. We are not even halfway through the show yet. Matt Riddle comes down to the ring, calls out Baron Corbin, calls him a coward, and then immediately they go to commercial break. We come back, and Matt Riddle's dancing in the ring. We're still waiting for King Corbin to come down. Finally, he comes down, and then Shorty G, who is now back to being a bad guy after being a good guy last week, after being a bad guy the week before. He attacks Matt Riddle from behind. Let's see. They have a match. Riddle beats Gable in a very short amount of time, shall we say? And then, eventually this matchup gets set up with Corbin and Matt Riddle, and they'll finally fight it out. But this is something that has been drug on for a while. And again, King Corbin again tonight proved Matt Riddle right. Matt Riddle called him a coward, basically said he didn't want to come out and face him man-to-man. He has Shorty G attack him from behind. And yeah, now he's begrudgingly going to get this match because nobody's been able to pick up the King's ransom on Matt Riddle. And again, it just has me looking at Baron Corbin. This dude, 6'8", 285, the most dominant moveset in WWE. And I know there are some people who are going to be laughing at me. Look up the moveset. No one has ever kicked out of End of Days. No one has even gotten close to kicking out of End of Days. He has the most dominant moveset in the company. He's afraid to fight anybody. And it is irritating. He could be so much more. He truly could be the top heel in the company on the same line with Roman and Braun and Bray right now. And they just don't want to go there with him.
It's the strangest thing. I know that we're both quite big fans of Baron Corbin. I think he fills a gap and he's extremely effective as a heel, just getting that heat. But he never used to be a cowardly heel. It wasn't until he was moved to Raw. It wasn't until essentially he shaved his head and all his bravery apparently went with it. When it comes to the match with Matt Riddle, it will eventually happen. It seems like they've just abandoned whatever they had initially planned for Matt Riddle because they've just been dragging it out and dragging it out and dragging it out. And it really shows how many changes there have been to plans recently when you look at what was initially supposed to be happening for Matt Riddle, according to reports, and none of it has come even close to fruition.
Well, he got, like I said, he was shot out of a cannon to get go. It looked like they were setting up maybe him having a lengthy feud with AJ Styles over the Intercontinental Championship. He did get an Intercontinental title match, and he lost it. And then we saw the reports that came out. I believe our colleague Gary Cassidy was one of the ones who said his first real feud was going to be with Baron Corbin. In that case, yes, it has been correct. But again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, why didn't they put this match on SummerSlam, or why didn't they do the match at Extreme Rules? They could have done it then, but now we're getting it here on Payback, on essentially the SummerSlam after show, which is what Payback is. And yeah, I fully expect Baron Corbin to lose this one. So that'll be something there for Matt Riddle, or maybe Shorty G gets involved and Corbin gets the win. Corbin's had a very rough 2020, which has been some great long-term storytelling because, his luck has been crap ever since he broke the mirror in Money in the Bank. So, only 6-7 more years of bad luck for Baron Corbin moving forward.
Baron Corbin's been giving a lot back recently. He was supposed to be feuding with Otis. Then Otis went off TV for a little while, so that was abandoned. He then was moved into this with Riddle. And I believe our mentioned colleague Gary Cassidy did say that there was something he had heard whereby Baron Corbin had said, no, Matt Riddle needs to work with at least 5 enhancement talents before I'll give him a match. I've heard a lot of people say, and in fact on Twitter, I've had a lot of people say it's about Baron Corbin. I believe Baron Corbin's a quite unpopular figure, which shows how good he is at his job, but quite unpopular figure. And he's been accused quite a lot of holding Matt Riddle down. I can't believe that for a second. He doesn't have that kind of power. And to my knowledge, based on the brief encounters that I've had with the guy, and in fact, you've interviewed him yourself, Rick.
Yes,
I simply don't believe that to be the case.
I would have a very hard time believing that one. Speaking, you brought up Otis. Ozzy has a question about Otis. When do we think he will cash in his Money in the Bank contract? Tom, any ideas on this one?
It's been rewritten 4 or 5 times already, the initial plans there, especially when it comes to the pandemic and everything. They've been waiting for a crowd, and there still isn't one. So they've been essentially killing time. Then Otis went off TV. Difficult situation because they don't know how to do it at the moment because everything has already changed so much from the initial plan. It's going to be a long time. It's going to be when there are fans, and it is going to, something's going to have to change in order for it to be successful.
And that might not be the worst thing right now because Otis has lost all of his momentum. Everything was riding high, even throughout the early onset of the pandemic. Like, he was still on fire. He was heavily pushed on SmackDown. Everything that he did with Mandy Rose led up to the big kiss at WrestleMania. And that was one of the best storylines that they were able to weave together over the last early half of the year, was the Sonya Deville, Mandy Rose, Otis, Dolph Ziggler storyline. All of that has now come to an end as of this past Sunday. And as I brought up earlier, it kind of seems like they're separating Otis and Mandy Rose a little bit because maybe what you said, Tom, they just aren't quite sure what to do with Otis right now because he has lost all of that momentum. So he's not ready to cash in right now. At least now he has a lunchbox that is shaped like the Money in the Bank briefcase. So that's something there. I'm sorry. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. They will sell a lot of those on WWE Shop. I guarantee you they will.
No, it's fair. It'll be popular with the kids.
So speaking of Otis, by the way, after the Corbin and Matt Riddle and Shorty G interaction there, we head to the back, and there is new single star Big E getting ready for a 6-man tag team match. Yeah. He's backstage with Heavy Machinery. They get made fun of for eating and playing with a bunch of meat by Sasha Banks and Bayley, which means the ladies are kicking off hour number 2, and they come down to the ring. And again, Tom, they're doing it. They every week there's another subtle little dive like this. Like, these two are about to just, that we're finally going to get it. Are you starting to buy in yet that we are actually building toward the Sasha Bayley split that has been delayed for seemingly years now?
No. Firstly, it's not subtle. It hasn't been subtle for a long time. When Charlotte first was involved in this storyline, it wasn't subtle then. When she first kicked her off of the Elimination Chamber, as I mentioned last week, it's not subtle. They keep doing it, and they keep holding it so close to the fire and then pulling it back. I'll believe it when I see it.
There was
one thing worth mentioning, though, is that they really rely on Sasha Banks and Bayley to open the second hour.
Yeah.
The amount of faith in them as a draw is incredible.
And it's proven to
Absolutely
work.
Justified.
They've been the highest rated segments on pretty much every show that they have been on. There was one nice little subtle moment when Sasha said that I will get my vengeance. And when she said the word vengeance, she looked over at Bayley. And that just had me thinking, okay, there's got to be at least a small chance that Sasha ends up walking out on this match on Sunday and we end up with new women's tag team champions. And that is a question that we do have here from Brenda. Do you think Baszler and Jax can get along if they win the women's tag team titles? Let's start there. Do you think they win the women's tag team titles on Sunday?
When it was rumored to be Baszler and Asuka, when I thought it might have been Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott, I would have said yes. However, Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax, I'm really not sure. And it's really something that since about a week before Extreme Rules, the rewrites for the Raw Women's title scene, which 3 of these women belong to, or at least did until recently, in the case of Sasha Banks, the rewrites have numbered in 10s and 20s. In a month, it's almost daily. They just rewrite the whole damn thing. So I don't even know anymore. I really don't. And that would certainly delay Sasha Banks versus Bayley, wouldn't it?
Yes, it would. But at the same time, I look at Shayna and Nia, and I just get this Cesaro-Sheamus feel to it. Like, this is, with the exception of the best of 7 challenge, this is set up the exact same way. 2 people who absolutely despise each other, but end up respecting one another. They fall into the tag team title. And this isn't a new storyline. They did the same thing with Daniel Bryan and Kane, to be fair. But this is a team that looks like they don't have any business being together. These 2 women don't like each other. But if they can build a foundation on mutual respect and fall into a women's tag team victory this weekend, maybe they could build something with these 2 ladies. I don't think it has long-term success because, you know, Shayna still has backup in her 4 horsewomen that we've saw at least once on Raw this week. But I think it would be a great way for them to get the tag team titles off of Sasha and Bayley. And then maybe that's what ends up building up their feud, is that they can't get along. And then ultimately, maybe a month or 2 down the road, they drop the tag team titles to somebody like Liv Morgan and Ruby Riott.
Possible. It would make a lot of sense, but I can't see either of those women being pinned by Ruby Riott or Liv Morgan. I just can't. We have that real problem at the moment where there is no mid-card in any division. There is a top level and there is everyone else. That's very much still the case in the Raw Women's title scene. That's very much looking like the case in the tag title scene, because there's a reason we haven't seen Liv Morgan, Ruby Riott, or in fact Natalya and Lana taking on Sasha Banks and Bayley, even though they could have done that at any time.
Brenda in the comments section is asking about Mickie James and Natalya. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that because that is a Raw storyline, but fear not. Here on Sportskeeda's YouTube channel and Facebook page, we do have a Raw after show that will break down all the Mickie James and Natalya that you want. It features Animal on that show. I believe it's called Raw is Tom, you know what it is, don't you? I'm terrible. We have a Raw after show. I promise you. We're so prepared for this. We are so prepared for this. This is Smack Talk. I'm Rick Ucchino, Tom Colohue joining us. We are now into hour number 2. So thank you everybody who has sat here and watched us just jabber on for an hour about SmackDown and any of the other rumors that have been going on.
We'll get better.
Yeah, this will get better. I promise. We'll be a little bit more concise. Maybe.
Let's not commit. We'll try and be a little bit more concise.
We will try to be a little bit more concise. But you know what? We're timing this out well because we just got into hour 2 of SmackDown and we're into hour 2 of our show. So this is all timing out very, very well. So Sasha Banks and Bayley, they had the interaction with Nia and Shayna. A lot of S's there. Shayna on screen sets up the matchup for this Sunday. Sasha, a lot of really good lines there that are at least teasing the possibility of a separation. We will have to see. Tom is in the camp of, I'll see it when I believe it. I'm in the camp of, I really just want to kind of see it already. Like, let's just go, because I know when these two, when that volcano finally erupts, I know that these two are going to make magic together.
But will they? There's no doubt the quality of the match will be incredible, but when you call something the greatest wrestling match ever, you're guaranteeing it won't deliver. When you build to a match for 5 years, and they have been built, don't get me wrong, there have been times when they've been on different shows and everything, but they have been building to this match for 5 years. There have been constant allusions to it, and it's been building and building and building. I don't think it can possibly deliver to the way that the fans are going to want it to. I think people have to lower their expectations, relax, and believe it when they see it.
That's fair. We cut to backstage after the ladies do their thing, and there is a very mad and very sweaty Braun Strowman. He has a little exchange there with Drew Gulak, which eventually leads to a squash match. Poor Drew. Drew gets squashed. Eventually, Braun signs the contract there. He said he wanted to basically kick Gulak's butt, and then he would sign the contract. And now there is signature number 2 on the night. That one also fairly easy to get. Sami Zayn pops up again. which I'm very happy about. And they called back to, the Great Liberator and his two buddies, and he's back there in the Champions Lounge, which with Shinsuke and Cesaro. They want to know where he's been for the last 5 months, and he's very non-committal. That kind of appeared to be the end of that faction there, where they kind of just shoot off Sami Zayn like, dude, we don't need you anymore. We don't care about you anymore. Did you get that kind of vibe that was the sign off for those three?
I got that vibe. I think long term there'll be a little bit more of it. There may be some sort of feud involved, but I definitely think this is the end of the actual partnership. I think we're likely to see Sami Zayn popping up at inopportune moments, possibly costing them the tag team championships, because if there's one thing we can guarantee with Sami Zayn, it's that he's an obnoxious little
PG, Tom. PG. I'll say this much. If this leads to a triple threat match for the Intercontinental Championship between Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, and Sami Zayn, inject that directly into my veins. Do it now. Do it. Do it right now, because you know, I'm going to set up expectations. That match will bang, sir, and you know that's going to happen. Justin Marcus Williams, by the way, guys, send in your comments, send in your questions. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Bayley versus Sasha Banks at WrestleMania 37. Sure, why not?
That would be a great main event.
Yes. Yes. If you're going to build to something for 5 years, it should be your main event.
Absolutely.
Hands down. Although I think the WrestleMania 37 main event's probably going to be Edge versus Orton, and probably for the WWE Championship, if I'm being completely honest. That's just where I'm going with that right now. So, Strowman destroys Gulag. He signs his contract, and then we get Lucha House Party backstage. Lindsay Dorado and Metalik, they get taken out by Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro, leading to Kalisto versus Cesaro. Kalisto with the spot of the night for me, where he stands up on Cesaro's chest and then does this insane flip DDT. I popped. I jumped out of my chair when he hit that move. So good to see Kalisto back. He's so good in the ring. It was a nice match. Lucha House Party ends up costing Kalisto the match with a distraction. They're teasing a Lucha House Party split here. I don't know if anybody cares enough about Lucha House Party to be upset about the split, but with the lack of actual physical tag teams on SmackDown right now, it seems like an odd choice.
I was worried that I would be being a bit extreme in saying that who actually cares if they split up, but you got there first. And I don't mean that in a negative way. They've not been on TV. They have not been getting the major headlines. What advantage is there to them splitting up, especially, as you say, with no other tag teams? Other than Heavy Machinery, who can they actually feud with? Now, I've got no issue with a Heavy Machinery versus Shinsuke Nakamura and Cesaro feud. I think that'll be a great feud, but they seem to hate the idea of doing it. And it just looks increasingly like the next tag team champions are going to be New Day again.
Which brings us up to Big E. Let's see. Big E, Sami Zayn, and Matt Riddle, they were announced for Talking Smack, which is going to be tomorrow. This is Smack Talk, so you can tune in, and they'll actually have like big marquee guests and things if you want to watch it on a Saturday morning on the WWE Network. So they were backstage again, setting up for the main event tonight, which we will get into. But before we got to the main event, we got the best backstage segment of the night, in my opinion. We see a very sad-looking Nikki Cross standing, what I'm going to guess is at some kind of practice ring in the back there at the Amway Center. She gets approached by Tamina. She's stroking her coffee cup. She's all sad. She's reminiscing about her friend, which she hasn't seen a whole lot. And in walks a very happy and pigtailed up Alexa Bliss, and she is just seems perfectly fine, seems a little chipper, seems like doesn't have a care in the world. And then Nikki starts poking the bear a little bit, brings up the Fiend's name, and Alexa Bliss loses her S. Smashes the coffee cup, walks out. There was an exchange there about her hair, about doing it up in the I don't know what you call that, the dreadlock look, the braids look, whatever it is, whatever you want to call it. There was talk of doing that, and immediately I'm seeing, oh, they're doing it, man. They're turning her into the Sister Abigail, man. It's happening. And everybody's like pointing to that creepy porcelain doll thing that the Fiend put in the Miz's kid's crib that one time. And I know there was that theory that was popping out there on the internet at one time that they could be turning Alexa Bliss. Victor right there. Boom. Alexa Bliss becoming Sister Abigail. I don't know if that's a statement or a question. Tom, I will ask you this. Is Alexa Bliss becoming Sister Abigail? Are we finally getting a Sister Abigail that is an actual person other than what was supposed to be Bray Wyatt's match as Sister Abigail?
No, we are not. There is no plan to have an official Sister Abigail in any quantity, in any variety in the WWE. If you listen to the aforementioned interview with Eric Redbeard, previously Eric Rowan, which is on the Sportskeeda Instagram Live with Stephanie Chase, he details there the fact that Sister Abigail was never supposed to be a person. And if you listen to the promos that Bray Wyatt has cut over the years, he makes it very clear that the Sister Abigail he is talking about is long since dead. Long dead, long gone. There is no intention for Alexa Bliss to be Sister Abigail. She's becoming something else entirely. To my personal belief, she's trying to emulate and replace Sister Abigail as a way of trying to manipulate Bray Wyatt.
Ooh.
That's what I see happening. One of the reasons I believe this is because Alexa Bliss's attire, with the exception of the jacket that she was wearing, very similar to Abby the Witch, which is a character in the Firefly Fun House.
Yeah. See,
now, this was originally
you're very good eye there.
Originally, this was based on Sister Abigail, but Bray Wyatt does this. Bray Wyatt keeps hold of things and people from his past. He may be looking to try and resurrect some form of Sister Abigail. She will never be Sister Abigail. There is no Sister Abigail.
See, now that's very interesting because, you know, what's the MO of Bray Wyatt and The Fiend is you have an interaction with him and you change. We've seen it with The Miz. We've seen it with Daniel Bryan. We've seen it with everybody with the exception of Goldberg. Don't get me going there. I'm the one who brought that up.
He did change Goldberg because he got beaten really easily.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But anybody who comes in contact with Bray Wyatt, with The Fiend Bray Wyatt anyway, changes. Most recently, Braun Strowman, he's now the monster. He shaved his head. He's no longer a happy-go-lucky babyface, monster among men. Now he's all down to business and just wants to destroy everything again. They always change. So what if Alexa Bliss, to your point, Tom, knows this and she's putting on a ruse where she is literally playing this so close to the vest? I don't know what her end game here is on this one, but if she's playing it so close to the vest to kind of bring in the Fiend to her to accomplish whatever it is that she has up her sleeve, that she's just playing a part, because Alexa Bliss, for her credit, her character this entire time, and the woman herself, is incredibly brilliant. She has always been smart. She has always been able to figure out a way to get whatever it is that she wants and to be successful. So maybe, just maybe, this is Alexa Bliss playing a game of herself to Bray Wyatt, who loves to play games.
If there's one word that has always been used to describe Alexa Bliss, it is cunning. She makes things happen. Now, the way I'm seeing this story, and don't get me wrong, this is my opinion of the story, Alexa Bliss is entranced by the Fiend. And this is very true of the person behind as well. She loves horror movies. She loves characters like this.
Good point.
And she has that manipulative streak where she can take things to her advantage. I think she isn't intentionally doing this. I think she is entranced by the Fiend. I think she wants to be part of that Firefly Funhouse. She wants to be part of the Fiend. Now, in some way, you can look at this as some sort of twisted love. And essentially, when it came to the kidnapping, you saw the suggestion of the Stockholm Syndrome, as it were. I think she's worried that he'll let her go. Ooh. And I think that's what a lot of her tweets are about as well. That's what I think is happening. I think she's trying to change to become what he wants. And that is why we're going to see a lot of allusions to Sister Abigail, because there's one thing Bray Wyatt has always wanted. It's that slightly insane return to mother concept.
Yeah.
That Bray Wyatt has always had.
God, you got my mind racing now.
That's the point, though, isn't it? It's such an interesting storyline.
It's a very good storyline, but here's the thing. It's like the more in depth I dive into things, in which and you know me, I've dived deep into the Bray Wyatt character before, and I dive deep into storylines, and then I build up these expectations, and then the expectations are so great in the story that I've come up with is, you just put it in your mind that that's the only logical thing, and it's the best answer, and then they go a completely different direction. We will see. I know Bray Wyatt is heavily involved in this. Alexa Bliss is heavily involved in this. There's a lot of different angles that they could go with it. It's going to be a fun ride. And I'm glad that they are continuing it, because with the injection into Roman Reigns, into everything, I was afraid that this story might fall to the wayside a little bit. And the fact that they were able to push this tonight and add this little twist, this little twisted bliss, shall we say, was very good.
There's no guarantee that Roman being here hasn't pushed it all to one side. You know how it is in the WWE. Ideas get thrown out, ideas get abandoned, even if they're good ideas. But there is no bigger fan of Bray Wyatt than Vince McMahon. None whatsoever. There are also a lot of people who've told me from backstage in WWE, they've told me Alexa Bliss is the next big breakout Hollywood star. She's getting a chance to show it. How's she doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So after the women's segment there, we could talk about Alexa Bliss all day. We've already
and we will at some point, I'm sure.
And we will at some point. We've been going for an hour and 15 minutes, and we still have 57 people here. Thank you. Please keep sending in your comments. Victor saying the new Wyatt family, possibly. I think the Wyatt family concept, they'll never call it the Wyatt family again, but that doesn't mean that he's not trying to add to his world. The whole feud with Braun Strowman was trying to get him to come back home and to align himself with Bray Wyatt. That's what they wanted. He wanted Braun Strowman back with him. So obviously he's trying to, he's tired of being alone. He never wants to be alone. That's why he has puppets.
Yeah.
That's why he fears being alone, which is why, yeah, I think there's a real possibility Alexa Bliss does end up with him. Will they call it the Wyatt family? I don't necessarily believe that. I think that concept is gone and in the past. I think, I think he's ever changing is Bray Wyatt. So he's not going to go back to that storyline.
I agree with you there. There are so many ways they could play this, and we've talked about Bray Wyatt till the end of time. I have said the whole time, even Husky Harris is consistent with Bray Wyatt. That is a canon character, because there has always been one tremendous fear of Bray Wyatt, and that is being alone. That's why he wants to go back to mother. That's why he followed Wade Barrett. That's why he followed the teachings of Sister Abigail. When he has no one above him, he tries to become the person above. He tries to then become the leader. But Bray Wyatt was never a cult leader. He followed Sister Abigail. He still follows Sister Abigail. Now he follows the Fiend, because in the absence of Sister Abigail, who was destroyed by Randy Orton, in the absence of Matt Hardy, who he attached himself to immediately afterwards,
yep,
he created this greater person, this greater power, all of his own. And that, I feel, is why Alexa Bliss is drawn to the Fiend, not Bray Wyatt.
That's going to be interesting to play out for sure. You are listening and watching Smack Talk here. I'm Rick Ucchino, Tom Colohue, our senior insider and journalist here at Sportskeeda. Every Friday night, 10 o'clock after SmackDown, we're going to break down the entire show. We're getting now into the end of the show. Adam Pearce gets backstage, finally gets a hold of Roman Reigns after knocking on the door several times and getting no answer. He walks into the locker room. There's the big dog. He gets a hold of the contract for the Universal Championship triple threat match, no holds barred, at Payback on Sunday, says he has to look over it first. And I'm immediately like, dude, it's a standard contract. It's a championship match. Just sign the freaking thing.
How did we not see this coming?
I don't, it's so blatantly obvious now when you go back and look at it, but heading to, I'm like, what is the point? What is the point of this? Just sign the dang contract. It shouldn't be this hard. If the Fiend signed the contract, which it was Bray Wyatt on behalf of the Fiend, if Adam Pearce was able to find the Firefly Fun House, which only 2 other people have done, and get the signature, it shouldn't be this hard for Roman Reigns.
It shouldn't be. The Firefly Fun House is just so easy to find now. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. Literally, he set up a room just backstage, and everyone knows where it is and keeps knocking it down, or in fact burning it down once, and he just builds his room again, and he just hides in his little room.
I'm pretty sure it's right next to catering. Huskus, he's trying to help out his boy. It is what it is. Yeah. So Roman's got to look over it. Whatever. We go to the main event, which is the 6-man tag team match. All right, whatever. It was fairly good. Nice to see Heavy Machinery back in the ring. Sheamus is at odds with Miz and Morrison. He ends up getting knocked off the ring. He leaves them high and dry. Big E ultimately gets the win over the Miz, which is great and fine and dandy and all that. But then we look at the time, and we still had 3 minutes left. And we still needed Roman Reigns to sign that contract. And then everybody's minds blew when they panned over to the right and realized that Roman Reigns was not on the couch alone. And I'm still getting chills thinking about this. Tom, we've had an hour and 20 minutes now to kind of process this because we have been doing a show at the same time. I still can't believe that they went there. I never even thought of it as a possibility that they would put Roman Reigns with Paul Heyman. Paul Heyman's greatest attribute is being an advocate, is being a mouthpiece. Brock Lesnar really never talks. He lets Paul Heyman do the talking for him. And Brock Lesnar's all about action. He shows up when the bell rings, he kicks butt, and he leaves. That's what Brock Lesnar is all about. Which makes me think, okay, does that mean we're going to get a Brock Lesnar-esque Roman Reigns now, where he does very little talking and he just shows up and destroys everybody, which, by the way, his shirt now makes a lot more sense. That he, everybody got, even myself, I hopped on, great slide ahead. I hopped on, I was like, oh, well, maybe he's the leader of Retribution. No, he's just now got Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman just wants him to destroy everything because Roman Reigns, very similar in a lot of ways to Brock Lesnar as far as body stature and dominance in WWE.
This is literally everything fans have been clamoring for years. There was originally a rumor at WrestleMania 31 that Paul Heyman would turn on Brock and side with Roman Reigns. That never came to fruition, but even then people were saying, the problem with Roman is that when he speaks, we don't believe it. Now, Roman's got a lot better on the microphone. He does not need Paul Heyman, but he wants him.
Yes.
He wants him. And looking at the wreck everything and leave, he's not going to be talking. He doesn't need to. He's not going to be doing anything. He's going to be coming in, destroying things. And he's just going to be destroying things. And we're an hour and 20 minutes in, and just for a peek behind the curtain. So we prepare this, we prepare our little screens, and then we've been learning on the fly with this. This is our first one.
Yes.
So I prepared the broadcast. I'm producing essentially here. We don't really need to do much, like Rick's been jumping in as well with the chat. And then you click go broadcast and it goes. We came into this right after SmackDown and just had a couple of seconds before we went live, and we just stared at each other with our mouths agog at what we had just seen, because we both came in at the exact same point. We're both on a slight delay because I get it on BT Sport and you get it on a different thing, which means a slight delay.
Yeah, YouTube TV, it's about a minute behind.
Yeah, we both tagged in at the same time, turned on our cameras, and just had the exact same expression. I am very, very, very happy. As someone who's been a Reigns fan the whole time, when I came back to wrestling, I wasn't even aware of everything that happened with Roman Reigns. I didn't know he'd tried to drug Vicky Guerrero. I didn't know he'd actively drugged Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. I didn't know about the whole thing with CM Punk. I was aware of CM Punk leaving, but I didn't know he'd essentially set fire to Roman's career on his way out. I didn't know any of this, so I just saw a guy who was coming down trying to kick some ass and get going. And that's the guy we got.
The one thing that I saw in the lead up to this bombshell that was dropped tonight, I kept seeing on Twitter, which again, you can follow me, by the way, at Rick Ucchino, spelled out on the screen right there, was that they really were hoping that we would get Roman Reigns with an edge. He's got the edge now. There's no question about it. This is so different. Like you said, this is what everybody seemingly wanted. And I think it was so great because I thought the show would open with Roman Reigns coming down to the ring and cutting a very lengthy promo about where he's been, what he's been doing, and what he's going to do.
Yes.
None of that. None of that whatsoever. There were people saying, look, ditch the body vest, ditch the Shield music, ditch everything in the past. And we very well might get that. We'll just have to wait and see how he comes down to the ring at Payback. I'm hoping that is the case. I want new ring gear. I want new music, everything. Ditch the past, ditch everything we've known about Roman Reigns and just go out there and destroy people. That's what I want, and I think that's honestly what we're going to get. And I am giddy as a schoolgirl, and that's the second time I've said that in an hour and a half now.
Well, it is a fact. That seems like it's exactly what we're going to get. And I've got to say, there were obviously a lot of rumors and suggestions that he was turning heel. I don't see that, because this Roman Reigns is impossible to boo. You're going to get the Thunderdome in active mutiny. You are. Think back to when Dolph Ziggler turned heel and was hitting Apollo Crews with chairs. Supposed to be a heel, but people were cheering him. We've talked about this. Becky Lynch, when she turned heel, nobody took it. Nobody cared. Nobody allowed it to happen. I've mentioned, I think we had this discussion on Backstage Heat, but like Dean Ambrose, if he hadn't have turned heel on Seth Rollins the same day that Roman Reigns announced he had leukemia, everyone would have booed Seth instead. Dean Ambrose, for anyone who doesn't know, is now Jon Moxley, the #1, and the PWI 500 recently, and the AEW champion. Slightly different people, though. Same guy, different character. Very different.
See, now that's the perfect example, right? Like the edge. What Jon Moxley is now is what we all wanted Dean Ambrose to be. And I'm wondering how much of that has been taken into context here with Roman Reigns. Like, we don't want to make the same mistake with Roman Reigns that we did with Jon Moxley / Dean Ambrose. So are they looking at what Jon Moxley has done in the last year plus with AEW, looking at his success and going, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should cut down on the goofy crap, and maybe we should just go full Roman Reigns and just let him be this badass that he can be. I'm wondering how much influence Jon Moxley has on this, if any at all.
I think it's definitely a really fair question and something worth discussing. There'll be questions about how much influence Roman Reigns himself had on this. They were in a lot of discussions over the last few weeks about what he wanted to do upon coming back. But I also think you have to spare a thought for people like Otis. They want a certain amount of this is for the kids, this is for this audience. The fact that they have someone like Otis who's just outright goofy means they can make people a bit more serious elsewhere because they've got that variety in their programming. You don't have to do the dog food. If you've got someone doing the ridiculous things, if you've got Big E throwing pancakes, it's vital that you have those characters. They can still be champions, but it is vital that you have those characters. Roman Reigns is about to embark on what is definitely going to be his best run. He's going to have more support than he has ever had. And I think the WWE, as much as anyone, they are there for it. My concern is that Bray Wyatt and Braun Strowman are going to suffer because of it. That's my concern going into this. But to steal a phrase from Seth Rollins, is Roman Reigns the greater good?
It's a fair question. Just wanted to answer this one here in the chat. Brendan wants to know, Paul Heyman got fired, so why was WWE bringing back again? Paul Heyman has never left WWE. He was relieved of his duties as the executive vice president or executive producer of whatever it is of Monday Night Raw. Executive director. He was always still a talent. He was always still going to be around to be Brock Lesnar's advocate, or so we thought. Now he has aligned himself with Roman Reigns, and I would expect this to be a thing that's going to last a while. This isn't going to be a Cesaro type situation where all of a sudden Cesaro was a Paul Heyman guy and then like 3 months later he wasn't. Unless Brock Lesnar comes back WrestleMania time, whatever, to reclaim his property, shall we say, in Paul Heyman.
I think this is a sign that we won't see Brock for a while. And when Paul Heyman was relieved of his duties as executive director, part of the statement did say that he would still retain his role as talent and would be focusing more on that. That is something I reported as well, focusing, really zeroing in on why he was relieved of that. And part of that was, I was specifically told he would be focusing more on his in-ring talent career. And the question that everyone had for me was, what in-ring talent career? Because he manages Brock and Brock's not there. My speculation at that point was maybe he's getting some new people. Didn't expect Roman Reigns to be the one, but maybe there'll be more. Maybe he'll be managing the Usos. Maybe he'll be managing a bloodline. Maybe he'll just be managing a variety of people, because you could have Roman, the Usos, and Naomi all managed by Paul Heyman. That's just speculation on my part, but that's an idea that I could very much get behind.
I could absolutely get behind that. And, Tom, we've now reached the hour and a half mark, and my phone's actually blowing up because we kind of got some breaking actual real news that I might have to do my daily duties on. I might be getting called in here. So I think we need to go ahead and end this first edition of Smack Talk. Rick Ucchino, Tom Colohue, we appreciate everybody for watching, all 55 of you who stayed the full 90 minutes. We're going to be doing this every Friday right after SmackDown. I don't think we could have picked a better week to launch. Holy mackerel, man. That was unbelievable. That was just well, here you go, boys. Let's toss you into the fire on this one. That was definitely something. So yeah, we'll be a little bit hopefully better prepared. You can't properly prepare yourself for that. And
I think we've had a great show.
Yeah, to get an initial reaction out of people, that was hard. That, I'll be honest, because I couldn't process it. I couldn't process what we had just seen. But it's going to be insane to watch. I am now really looking forward to Payback. And if you are as well, make sure to join Tom and I on Twitch tomorrow night at 6 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, which is what?
That is 11 p.m. UK time.
There you go. What is our Twitch?
It is twitch.tv/backstage team.
Yes, make sure to follow us. We are on every Saturday night at 6. We will also be having a Payback review show on Monday night at 6 Eastern Standard Time, which will be 11 UK time. And we'll be having many, many more shows on our Twitch channel as well. More to come on that in the future months. But we'll go ahead and wrap up here today. We appreciate everybody for watching, for your comments. Join us again next week here on Smack Talk, here on the Sportskeeda YouTube and Sportskeeda Facebook page. Have a wonderful evening or morning, Tom. Good morning, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, it's 4:30 in the morning. Thank you to everyone who's joined. Thank you to the 340 people who've clicked like or some variety thereof. Please do remember to do that before you head out. Thank you to everyone for watching. We have been Tom Colohue and Rick Ucchino, Smack Talk on Sportskeeda, and thank you very much for joining us.